So we could see that wave coming, and then we said, hey, we understand e-commerce now. Why don't we go and build a brand for us? And that's how Flatheads started. So there is a logic to that madness. A very well positioned question, because this is the exact same thing that we've struggled with.
But ये जो नशा है salary, how do you overcome that, and how do you plan to be without that for next 6 months to 1 year?
Right.
The fact that you had also pitched on Shark Tank as well, right? And there is always a lot of glamour around that piece. Whenever you go everywhere, I mean, people talk about it, yaar kaisa tha, kya tha, and all of that. What I want to understand is, how was the expectations versus reality scenario? Hello and welcome to the first episode of a brand new season of Fintech Ki Baat Dil Se. We have with us Mr. Ganesh Balakrishnan, founder and CMO of Aurm. Mr. Ganesh, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure having you here.
Hey Shreyas, thanks a lot for having me on the new season of Fintech Ki Baat, and looking forward to a great conversation.
Likewise, I'm super excited to have you here today, given your track record of multiple successful ventures, and we are all excited to learn from you. Let's take it from the top. How did it all begin? How did your entrepreneurship journey start? And would love to learn, would love to understand from you on kind of what inspired to get you into entrepreneurship.
Sure. So I've been actually a corporate guy for the first 10 years to 12 years of my life, right? I did my standard, the IIT, IIM track, and then got into a corporate job. And during my last stint in Honeywell, where I was leading the corporate strategy function, I actually met my co-founder, who I knew from college, from old IIT days, a guy called Utkarsh, right? So, and we used to sit together and keep brainstorming and coming up with wacky ideas. That was just a fun activity we used to do after work, and during work as well. We worked together on incubating a lot of new ideas inside Honeywell. And when we were doing that, one fine evening, बैठे I asked him the question कि यार यहाँ पे बैठे नौकरी में कब तक चक्की पीसेंगे, कुछ करते हैं अपना खुद का. यहाँ पे अगर हम इंक्यूबेट कर सकते हैं तो खुद का भी कर सकते हैं. And surprisingly he said हाँ चल ट्राई करते हैं. And we said, then we just shot that idea across a couple of times, slept over it, came back again on Monday morning and said, this sounds interesting, why don't we do this? And that's how it started. That was the entrepreneurial journey start, right? So
interesting. And what was that startup that you guys first built?
So we started with a retail analytics B2B startup called Windsleeve. Ran it for about a year, which is when we realized getting payments and collections out of B2B retail companies in India was very tough. We did a couple of projects on a consulting basis, but also scalability was a challenge on that kind of a business. So which is when we said, why don't we try something else? And then we started a mobile payments app called Momoe. MOMOE stood for Mobile Money Everywhere. It was a white space in mobile payments in 2014. Right, that is when the app ecosystem was exploding in India. Mobile payments were restricted to online recharges of your phone, right? Yeah, and utility bill payments, electricity bill, वगैरह.
Right.
There was nobody doing it on the ground in retail stores and stuff like that, right?
This is back in 2014, right?
2014, yeah, very early days. But we used to go to China as part of our Honeywell stint. We used to go to China, and we were mind blown by how WeChat Pay and Alipay were actually disrupting the payments industry. Right? Everything was mobile payments. They would refuse to take cards. Right? No Visa is what they used to say in most of the stores. And we said, yeah, this looks like something that India will adopt, because the same data ecosystem is exploding, right? Mobile phones, smartphones are kicking off. Eventually, this has to happen in India as well. And why isn't anybody doing it? And so we came back and we said, hey, why don't we try this out? And that was the genesis of Momoe. right? So
Okay.
our use cases were very clear. It was eat, so all restaurants and any eateries that you go to. Then next is shop, so any retail stores that you go to shop, or any delivery stuff that comes to you. And commute was whether it's a bus ticket, a train ticket, a toll road, whatever, right? So all those should be covered in your payments journey, and everything you should be able to do on the phone. So that was the shop and commute. That's why we said mobile money everywhere. So that was the concept of Momoe. We were one of the early guys in India to start that. There was one in Delhi and there was one in Bombay as well, which was
Right.
around the same time. But yeah, we were one of the very early people to do offline payments.
That is, I think, exactly also when even Paytm just had started off with the recharges and everything, please.
Correct.
And the prepaid wallet, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So I think first was a data analytics startup, right? If I'm not wrong. And then the second one was Momoe, and then you went into Flatheads and now Aurm. So one thing that really kind of stands out to me is that all of these are completely different sectors. First thing, right? And someone who essentially is a core fintech guy and has been for past 8 years, I can't essentially fathom how easily or how easy or difficult it would be to kind of shift verticals after like in a different entrepreneur or in every journey as such, in every startup journey, and get into that depth of knowledge to run that business and exit successfully as well. So how did you kind of do that? How did you pivot or change the business or this thing, industries or domains so easily, or this thing?
So it was actually a progression. It just seems random when you look at these in isolation. But retail analytics we had started because we were really excited in solving consumer, mind map problem of what the consumer thinks and what do they buy and why do they buy what they buy. Right? So this was the problem that we wanted to crack in our minds, and that's what we started out with. We went to the retail companies and asked them for consumer analytics data, so which we could analyze and come up with insights on what people were purchasing, how often they were purchasing, right, and why they were purchasing. So there's a larger insight behind those patterns, right? So that was what we endeavored to do. Then one thing we figured out was that even if you get that data doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the retail company, right? So the best you can do is a consulting engagement with them, but you will never be able to own that data and do something with it. Which is when we said, hey, owning the payment stack where the customer actually pays and has a bill of what to pay, that intelligence actually is much more powerful, because number one, you control the payment interface, and number two, at that point you can do a lot right, with consumer insights on when are they buying it, why are they buying it, and then get to the action as well. What will you do with that data and insights, right? So a lot of those could be possible in payments, and hence we decided to own the checkout process, not just the payment but also the checkout, right? So the entire bill would come on your phone, you would pay on your phone, you could split the bill among multiple people, all those things you could do on the app, and we would get the insights of the data, right? So it was a progression from there. Momo got acquired by an e-commerce company, e-commerce unicorn, right? And we worked there for 2 years after the acquisition. So that's where we saw the boom in e-commerce and the new brand wave that's going to come, right? We anticipated that, the horizontal marketplaces like Amazon and Flipkart are there. Vertical marketplaces are now booming. This was in the 2017-18 time period, right? Marketplaces like Myntra, Nykaa, these are vertical marketplaces, right? So these started booming. And the next wave is going to be, brands, individual brands and D2C, that's going to pick up. So we could see that wave coming. And then we said, hey, we understand e-commerce now. Why don't we go and, build a brand for us? And that's how Flatheads started. So there is a logic to that madness.
Makes sense. Now that you give that context, I think I can now connect the dots and see how could it have progressed. Interesting. Let's take a step back and kind of go through the journey that you have had of building a retail analytics startup, building Momo as well as building Flatheads. And So you did touch upon it a bit, but would want to understand how did you identify कि यही धंधा करना है? Like this is what we want to do, because that's a big bet. Jumping from a corporate job, जब आपकी सैलरी बंद होने वाली होती है और आप 6 महीना तो ब्रेनस्टॉर्मिंग में लगा दोगे, तो वो मतलब फट के हाथ में आ जाती है लोगों की. So how do you kind of zero down कि यही करना है?
Sure. Actually, Utkarsh and I had a very interesting process which we used to follow in Honeywell as well. And even now, whenever we meet, we get into these kind of discussions. It's interesting. So he comes from a consumer ethnographic, consumer empathy, deep consumer insights, design thinking kind of a perspective. He's a design guy, right?
Got it.
I come from a data, consulting, insights, Excel sheets, kind of a perspective, right? So both of us are very different. Macro picture, understanding of industry, right? The industry insights. Those are the kind of things that I bring. So we are very complementary in nature in terms of thinking, right? So when we brainstorm, this is what we do. I bring in a lot of the macro trends that are going, right, in the industry, right? What's going on in the consumer industry? For example, now the wave of D2C brands is coming up, but D2C brands are also realizing that it is not just online; they also need to get into the offline mode. True. So you need to be an omni-channel presence. Then there is a wave of Make in India for the world that is starting.
Right.
Previously, we were importing brands. Now we are starting to export brands, right? So all these are industry trends that are happening in the brand space, for example. So I would pick a lot of these industry macro trends and come into the room. He will bring a lot of the consumer trends. What is happening with consumers, right? For example, people are now much busier because you are nuclear families and typically both husband and wife are working, at least in the urban scenario, right? Now, if that happens, then your behaviors around buying food versus cooking food is changing. There's a lot more of Zomato and Swiggy going on.
Right.
What is the next step that is going to happen? Is the kitchen itself going to change, right? So there is a lot of consumer trends that are happening and industry trends. When you intersect these two trends is when you can find points where you will see that there is something going to change, right? Like this example that I just told you. Nuclear families, less time to make food. Industry trend is there is modernization and technology coming into the kitchen as well. Now, how does the kitchen change for the Indian household, right? There is a cultural angle to it as well, because Indian households and the way we perceive cooking is very different from foreign household and the way they do, right? So how do you intersect those two? Maybe there is a complete reimagining of an Indian kitchen at the intersection of those two trends. Right? Maybe the appliances will become different. It will become smarter. It will not be the same gas stove and chimney that we normally have. Maybe there's a lot smarter way of doing it. Right? So there are these one cook pots that are coming up now. Right. There are smart stoves that are coming up that switch off automatically. अगर दूध उबल रहा है तो अपने आप बंद हो जाएगा. सीटी बज रहा है तो वो 2 सीटी के बाद बंद हो जाएगा. Right? All those things are innovations that are coming in that redefinition of the Indian kitchen. Right? So these are the kind of insights that we used to brainstorm. So every time we hit an intersection of an industry insight and a consumer insight, we will come up with a new idea. And there is a folder that we have called the stargazing folder where we used to have put all these ideas. Wow. Then we used to pick based on some shortlisting criteria. Number one, is this a viable business from a overall revenue perspective? Is this something that we are excited by? Is this something that I would want to do for the next 10 years of my life? Right? So these are filters that we used to put to start shortlisting ideas. And then we used to deep dive into it. Right? So that's how our process worked.
Interesting. I think this brings a lot more order to the normal chaotic process of brainstorming, right? And it's brilliant, to be very honest, when you try to intersect the macroeconomic trends with the consumer insights that you're getting and try to figure out those culmination points which you see are essentially going to create the new industry trends. But taking a step back here, right? When you kind of were to suggest a way for new entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs to brainstorm, and many of them might not have the kind of consumer or industry insights, or maybe macro level insights are still more accessible for people if they do good enough research and are well read. But consumer insights is something that might come in a bit more not that easily, right? It's a bit more tough to get hands on that. How would you suggest a new entrepreneur would design this kind of a process?
So every entrepreneur has to be a very keen man watcher. You have to observe people all the time, right? There are 2 or 3 ways this can happen, right? Number one, it could be a problem that you are facing and it becomes deep enough that you want to do something about it, and then you realize that you're not the only one. There's a whole bunch of people facing it, and hence there's a market, right? So that could be one way to do it. The second way to do it is you observe people around you in your friend circle, in your corporate circle, wherever, right? And then figure out if there is something that is a jugaad, that we are adjusting ourselves to something that is suboptimal, which can actually be significantly better, right? And why are we adjusting?
Interesting.
Then you start asking that question in your mind. So you need to tune yourself into these kind of, asking why based on observations, right? So that's a skill, and it can be developed, right? So that is the other way to do it. And the third is, of course, you can do your primary research techniques and ethnographic techniques and design thinking techniques that you employ to get into that kind of a wave. Typically, if you are experienced in a certain domain, you will start seeing deep problems which anybody else outside that domain will never see, right? That is another way to find problems. That's another way to find insights which you can actually work on, right? So
makes sense. I think that is really helpful. Thank you so much. Let's take a step back from here, right? चलो idea मिल गया, सब पता है ये करना है, and you have zeroed down on it from an entrepreneur's perspective. But ये जो नशा है, salary, how do you overcome that, and how do you plan to be without that for next 6 months to 1 year? मतलब पता ही है कि हाथ में कुछ नहीं आने वाला है और खर्चा होने वाला है. So how do you financially prepare for that shock?
A very well positioned question, because this is the exact same thing that we've struggled with, right? Both of us had spent 12 to 15 years in corporate, and then what do we do? Number one, it is a leap of faith to become an entrepreneur, because the odds are always against you, right? And so you need to condition your mind to make sure that you are going to take the leap, number one, right? Number two, in terms of financial cushion, it entirely depends on what your life stage is, right? Number one, you need to learn to be frugal. That is a given, right? You cannot sustain your current lifestyle that you were doing when you were in a job, right? So you need to start looking at, what is the sustenance income that you need to, it should be comfortable. ऐसा नहीं है कि you're cutting corners, but you should be comfortable, right? Maybe not take that international vacation, maybe take that as a, India vacation or a near country vacation rather than a, Europe or an Australia, something like that, right? So you need to start figuring out what that optimum is where you can actually be comfortable, but at the same time, not burning through too much money. Typically, I would say 18-month cushion of finances is good. If you are a bachelor with no, EMIs or, no sword hanging on your neck in that sense, then you can even cut that down to 15 months, minimum 12 months, not less than that. If you have family, if you have EMIs, then that number keeps going up, right? You need a lot bigger cushion. So typically, if you have a family with an EMI, I would suggest at least 24 months of runway to be there with you. And that runway could be a conversation with your wife as well, in case your spouse is working, right? So, or you could do an early friends and family kind of a funding round where you get in money from your relatives and your close friends who bet on you rather than bet on the business, right? So those are other ways to solve for that financial cushion. The last thing is when you do your business plan, right? Typically you will build a P&L. You will have, this is the revenue and this is the cost, right? Now, a lot of that, if you're bootstrapping, then you need to account for that money as well in your finances. And the way to do that is, तुमने जो भी plan बनाया ना, उसका जो revenue है, उसको आधा कर दो, right? और उसका जो cost है, उसको double कर दो. और तुम्हारा जो timeline है ना, launch and growth का, उसको double कर दो, right? That is the business plan that you need to follow for, and that's the business plan that you need to plan for in terms of your bleed.
Makes sense.
So generally, and the reason why you do that is because the risks of the startup will make you pivot and do a lot more different things, right? So hence your revenue will be delayed, right? And the thing that you launch with will never be what the consumer will want. So you will pivot and you will change things, right? So a lot of those is what takes into account in that thumb rule. Yeah.
Interesting. No, I think this is really insightful, and I think what really kind of helped me get things into perspective is जो भी आपने revenue लिया उसको आधा कर दो, and whatever you have taken as your the time that you hit revenue, make it double. And I think that really makes sense. Sometimes investors के लिए जो हम बनाते हैं presentations and all, you kind of tend to either extrapolate or be a bit more aggressive. I don't think extrapolate is the right word, but थोड़ा सा आप aggressive होते हो. But you need to be equally cautious in your financial planning, and that essentially, kind of permeates through in what you said.
Yeah. Really, typically, this is a classic saying, right? You overestimate the short-term results and you underestimate the long-term results. You need to be patient, right? Short-term में तुमने जितना plan किया उतना नहीं होगा, लेकिन longer-term में, if you do things right, you will see the uptick very quickly.
True. Perfect. No, I think this is brilliant. Super interesting. Let's take a step back here again, and let's talk about the lessons that you have gotten from all the startups that you have built, right? Be it Momoe, be it Flatheads, and be it the retail. I'm sorry, I keep on forgetting the name.
Windsleeve.
So be it Windsleeve.
Windsleeve is the airport mein you see that thing, right, with the red and white stripes that keeps glowing. Correct. That's called Windsleeve.
Okay. Right. So be that. What was the what do you say? What were the lessons that you got from each of the startups, and what would you advise basis those lessons to the aspiring entrepreneurs? Yeah, these are the absolute do's that you have to do, and these are the things that आपको करने ही नहीं है, मतलब दूर रहो इससे.
So number one, if you are thinking about a growth business, you need to think about scale from day one, right? You may not do things that scale in the beginning, but you have to keep your eye on what do I build, how do I build the playbook for scale, right from day one. Product market fit पे fight मारना पड़ता है और बहुत कुछ करना पड़ता है जो scale ना हो, but एक बार product market fit मिल गया, then you really need to figure out how to grow quickly and how to build a playbook around it for scale. चाहे वो प्रोडक्ट हो, चाहे वो टेक्नोलॉजी हो, चाहे वो कंज्यूमर एक्विजिशन हो, राइट, और ऑपरेशंस हो, एवरीथिंग हैज टू कम टुगेदर फ्रॉम अ स्केलेबल पर्सपेक्टिव, नंबर वन. अदरवाइज you will end up building something and making a lot of effort to create a value proposition, but then you will not know where to go from there, right? 0 to 1 हो जाएगा, उसके बाद कैसे जाना है, it will be very difficult. So you need to start thinking about that day one. Number 2, see, there is a portfolio approach to entrepreneurship is what I genuinely feel, right? Think about it. आप अगर VC हो, you typically have a set of 20 to 30 companies that you will invest in, right, from your fund, out of which you will expect 1 or 2 to become, stars, which will return the fund many times over. The remaining 5 or 6, you will expect them to, at least return the money that you have invested in them, right? And the remaining ones, you don't expect anything out of them, right? That is the risk you're taking in building that portfolio. When you're an entrepreneur, most people take that one idea that they want to run and believe that will be the one that will become the superstar, right? Why should it be so, right? Even if you're the smartest cookie on the planet, your chances right now, it is 1 in 10 will actually survive. Forget about becoming a unicorn. 1 in 100 becomes a unicorn. Right. If you're really smart, you will probably increase those chances to 3 in 10, right? So there is still a 70% chance that you will not make it. There's a 30% chance that you will build a decent startup. Why do we put that much pressure on ourselves to say that one startup has to succeed? We should just take a portfolio approach to startups. Start when you are, as young as possible. Build something on the side while you're working. There are many ways to cut this, right? So keep doing and tinkering until you find something that will become successful. Maybe you will fail a couple of times. Maybe you will, just about break even a couple of times, but then you will learn, and maybe the 6th try that you're hitting will be that superstar that you will go on to build.
Makes
right?
sense.
But you need to build a portfolio approach to it. So that is what my definite advice to entrepreneurs would be: start early and keep tinkering.
True. I think that is really interesting. And given the fact that you have, I think you had successfully exited Momoe as well, what kind of helped you in plan and build that exit?
So there, the building for scale question was there, right? Because since we were, we were going city by city, because every time you have to sign up retail stores, restaurants, and so on, it became a challenge to grow very quickly with scale. Whereas if you are a Paytm who has online recharge, you can do pan India on day one, right? Sabko online recharge chahiye hota hai, right? So the question of scale came up, and that's when we said, hey, how do we think about building the playbook on the merchant side on one side and on the consumer side? How do we build for scale, right? So that's when we started talking to banks, we started talking to e-commerce companies, we started talking to service providers in the retail space to figure out whether either we can hack the merchant side to scale, or we can hack the consumer side to scale, or if we can do both, right? And e-commerce was one space where both the merchant side and the marketplaces, right, both the merchant side and the consumer side were to a decent scale, right? And that's where the conversations ended up becoming a lot more fruitful for us, because we can potentially take Momo and become the default payment gateway for all the merchants whether they're doing it in their stores or whether they're doing it online on the marketplace where they're selling, and consumers can also do that adoption on their side, right? So that mix came together very well when it came to e-commerce, and that was the thesis why we went towards an acquisition.
Interesting. So what would be your advice based on this to people who are currently at maybe, let's say, just hit revenue, or probably, not just hit revenue. Okay, let's not define that stage, but what would be your advice for people who are essentially planning an exit for, I would say, an early to a mid-stage kind of a company?
So if you are thinking about what's next, 2 or 3 things, right? Why we would think about an exit. Number one, there is founder fatigue. You've done this hard enough for long enough, and you really want to focus on something new, or you just want to have a logical conclusion to what your journey has been so far, and that happens a lot, right? Number 2, when you see that there is some sort of a plateauing happening and you want to define that next level of growth, right? Right? Online companies have grown to a 50 crore number, and then you see a plateau in online, right? Itna hi kar sakte ho, iske aage kya hoga? Then you need to start building for offline, right? Maybe there is an offline player who is willing to join hands with you and take you to the next level of scale. So building for the next level of scale and next level of growth is a very clear thesis, right? The third is potentially there is a buyer who is very interested for specific reasons, and he comes and makes an offer to you. If the offer is fun, if you see, ego ko thoda side mein rakh ke, if you're able to actually say, is this offer, does it make us better off as a company, right? Then as a shareholder, as a stakeholder, as an investor in the company. Third, as you as an employee and a promoter, right? Are you better off? If these situations are satisfied, right, that is something that you should worth considering. It is worth considering, right? So you should definitely consider. So that was typically the things that you would look up in terms of acquisition.
Makes sense. Thank you so much. I think this was really interesting. One final question before we kind of close this segment, and I'll want to kind of focus a bit more on Flatheads and essentially the fact that you had also based on Shark Tank as well, right? And there is always a lot of glamour around that piece whenever you go everywhere. People talk about it, kaisa tha, kya tha, and all of that. What I want to understand is, how was the expectation versus reality scenario? Like, when you went there, you had something in mind, ki ye hoga, aisa hoga, TV pe dekha tha. And obviously there was something that you met with over there. So how was that? What were your expectations? How did that actually went across, and how was the overall experience?
I think number one, I had heard a lot of people say, and yeah, अफवाहें फैलती रहती है ना कि it is staged and it is you know things have been set up earlier. So I expected the sharks to at least know that I was coming. Right? I know a couple of them from earlier during entrepreneurship, during my entrepreneurship journey. Right? So I expected them to know that I was coming. The reality was they did not. Right? Just after the previous pitch ends is when they get the dossier for the first time. When the stage is being set up for the next pitch. Literally, that is, and you can see that in the video that they show. Right? अरे ये तो वो कंपनी है, right? सही जूते हैं. That is genuine surprise. They don't know that I'm coming. Right? That is very interesting. Number one, it is not staged. Right? It is something that they make it surprising so that they can capture genuine reactions on TV. Right?
I see.
Number two, what you see on the pitch is about 15 minutes. I expected that conversation to go for about half an hour, just like we are doing this conversation, and then you'll edit it a little, right? Guess what? It went on for 2 hours.
Oh right? My God!
And most pitches go at least for an hour, if not more, right? That gets shortened to like 10 minutes to 15 minutes.
So
that was a surprise, and I remember I was the slot before lunch. And थोड़ी देर बाद अमन ने बोला यार 1 मिनट रुको, क्या मतलब खाना वाना खाना है कि नहीं, क्या चल क्या रहा है. So that was the second part. Third, I expected that what you see on TV is the classic sharks coming and pouncing on the founder and all that stuff. But what actually happened there was half of it was the pitch, right, that we did. But the remaining half was actually entrepreneurs talking to another entrepreneur. Right? All of them are startup guys. They have built their company. So it was actually, us brainstorming almost, right? Shooting back and forth on, hey, how can this be made to work? What are the kind of things that have gone wrong so far? How can we make this better? What channels would you use? What direction would you go to? How would you make your revenues better? How would you understand customer thing? How do you change your product for the better? It was a conversation of an entrepreneur talking to another entrepreneur. That was not expected at all when I walked in there. Right? That was very interesting. And the last thing was just in terms of the intimidation that happened when I walked in there, right? There are at least, 15 cameras, if not more, all around you. Lights, the sound is blaring, right? And when you walk in, yes, दिख रहा है कि वो TV के लिए है, but when you walk in, that suddenly that lights, camera, action जो होता है ना, you've never been on screen before, you've never practiced this, right? So वहाँ जब जाते हैं तो it's a completely different feeling, right? It throws you off. So that is one thing that I did not expect. I thought that हाँ ठीक है, थोड़ा सा lights होगा, but we will adjust to it. But I was completely thrown off. So that was an interesting part. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun doing it.
Awesome. I think this is what really kind of took me by surprise is the fact that ये 2-2.5 घंटे का conversation होता है जिसको condense करता है. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, right. What you saw was a 14-minute version. Right. But it actually was, little more than 2 hours, I think, is what it took.
Crazy.
Yeah, so their editing team is really good.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, picking out the right moments and pushing them on the actual video, that is something difficult. But overall, I think this was really helpful for everyone out there considering to go as well as people who are curious. Thanks a lot, Mr. Ganesh. I think this was super exciting. And with this, we'll end the first segment, Founder Story. See you in the next segment, Fintech Ki Baat, very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.